You are welcome here. If weariness has followed you into this moment, it does not need to be explained. This space is made for you, as you are, without correction or hurry. You may be listening from a place where the day has stretched long, or where the night has arrived without ease. Restlessness does not need to leave before these words begin. Silence does not need to be perfect. What follows is a slow reading of Scripture, paced gently, offered for rest and comfort. There is nothing to figure out, nothing to respond to. If it feels right, you may share your city and the time you're listening as a quiet way of being present with others. You may leave a short prayer, even unfinished. And if this moment feels like it could be shared, you might pass it along to someone close, simply as presence. The words begin without demand. He comes into the listening, not as a speaker gathering attention, but as one already known. His voice is not raised. It moves at the pace of breath, as if the words themselves are finding their place in the dark. There is a sense of being kept, though it does not announce itself. Not as a statement, but as a subtle orientation, like balance found without thought. My foot will not slip comes to him as a remembered phrase, not pressed, not proved. The night does not rush away. It stays wide, but quieter now, with fewer edges. The presence of care is not dramatic. It is steady, almost ordinary. He notices that even here, nothing essential has been taken. The soul is still his. The breath still arrives. I have set the Lord always before me, he recalls. Though the words arrive as fragments, not lines. Before him, not ahead of him. Nearer than direction. What is before him is not light yet. It is awareness. A sense that he is not walking unseen. The heart does not leap. It listens. There is a cup somewhere in the memory. Not lifted, not described. Just present, held loosely in thought. It carries what has been given and what has not been named. The idea of inheritance drifts through, without edges. Something received rather than achieved. Something that does not need to be guarded tightly. He does not claim it. He allows it. The ground beneath him feels secure, though the path ahead is not explained. Lines have fallen, the psalm once said, but now they feel more like gentle markers than boundaries. Nothing closes in. The night air shifts. He senses a shelter that has no walls, a protection that does not block the world out, but keeps him within it. God is our refuge and strength, surfaces quietly, not as proclamation, as recognition. Strength here is not force. It does not brace or harden. It steadies. The sounds around him do not stop. They soften, or perhaps his listening changes. Stillness does not replace sound. It lives alongside it. The city, the room, the unseen distances remain, but they no longer press. He becomes aware of watching without strain, of being watched over without inspection. The Lord is your keeper, the phrase passes through and continues on. Keeper, not controller. Watcher, not interrupter. The eyes lift slightly, not to search the sky, but to release the ground. I lift up my eyes to the hills, he once sang. Now the hills are memory, suggestion, possibility. Help does not arrive as interruption. It is already present as capacity to remain. The body begins to follow the tone of the words. Shoulders lower without instruction. The jaw loosens. The sense of time shifts. Minutes lose their weight. Waiting becomes less sharp. Unless the Lord builds the house, echoes faintly. But the rest of the sentence does not insist on being completed. The house here is not wood or stone. It is the inward space where attention rests. Building happens without noise, without visible progress. Even now, children are mentioned somewhere in the memory of the psalm, but here they are more like future breath, future care. Not responsibility yet, just life continuing. He does not reach for meaning. He lets the words do what they do when left unforced. Peace does not arrive all at once. It is not announced. It appears in small permissions. To lie down and sleep. The line brushes past, but sleep is not demanded. Rest is allowed to be partial. The night continues to be night, but it is no longer empty. There is a sense of belonging that does not require arrival, of dwelling that moves with him. The presence does not crowd the space. It makes room. His soul waits, though not tensely. Waiting here is closer to listening, to leaning in without expectation. The light is still faint, but it is steady enough to notice. Breath draws inward. Thought loosens its grip. Nothing needs to conclude. The words carry on quietly as the listening deepens and attention slips gently inward. The movement continues without announcement. He does not step into something new so much as notice what has already been holding. There is a sense of balance, delicate but reliable. Not the kind learned through effort, but the kind that arrives when weight is shared. He will not let your foot be moved, comes back to him, not as promise, but as quiet description. The ground does not explain itself. It simply stays. He feels how often the body prepares for slipping, even when nothing is giving way. That readiness softens now. Not entirely. Enough. The night holds its shape. Sounds come and go, some close, some distant. They pass without asking him to follow. Watching happens without strain. Eyes open then close. Neither feels more faithful than the other. The idea of being kept returns, altered slightly, not guarded against everything, but accompanied through it. A presence that does not crowd, does not hover. He who keeps you will not slumber. The words arrive slowly, then loosen. Not slumbering does not mean staring. It feels more like steady awareness, unbroken by fatigue. He considers how often care is imagined as effort, as vigilance that exhausts. This care feels different. It does not need to be refreshed. It does not lean heavily on time. The night sky is not visible where he is, but he knows it exists. Stars continue their quiet work, unseen, unneeded. The world keeps turning without his supervision. This knowledge does not diminish him. It relieves him. He notices the subtle shift when responsibility loosens its grip. The shoulders ease again, almost imperceptibly. Breath deepens, not because it is instructed to, but because it is allowed. The Psalms move within him, like remembered paths. Not lines to follow exactly, but routes that have been walked before. They know how to carry weight. Preserve me, he recalls. Though the plea feels less urgent now. Preservation here is not rescue from danger. It is continuity. The sense of slipping belongs more to thought than to ground. Thought rushes ahead, invents loss, prepares for falling. The body, meanwhile, remains where it is. He lets thought move without chasing it, lets it circle and fade. Attention stays closer to breath. The keeper is not visible. There is no form to imagine, only the effect, steadiness. The phrase right hand passes through him, symbolic and gentle. Not grasping, not pulling. Near enough to be felt without pressure. He realizes how often safety is imagined as enclosure. Walls, doors, locks. This safety feels open, like space that does not threaten. The night does not brighten, but it grows more familiar, less unknown. He listens for what might interrupt. Nothing does. Even the interruptions feel softer. Memory surfaces without warning. Moments of being caught before falling. Times when balance returned without explanation. He does not linger on them. They serve only to remind him that this steadiness has existed before, often unnoticed. The Lord is your shade, comes to him, and the image rests lightly. Shade does not block light entirely. It tempers it. The idea of heat moves through his awareness. The heat of the day that has already passed. The strain that came with it. Now there is relief. Not from all things, but from excess. The moon is mentioned somewhere in the psalm, but here it feels more like timing than object. Night doing what night does. Not harmful, not benevolent. Simply present. He feels how vigilance eases when nothing is expected to go wrong. Not because danger is denied, but because it is not given the final word. The path beneath him continues, unseen beyond the next step. This does not trouble him as much now. Direction feels less urgent than presence. I will not be afraid, the words hover, but they do not settle into declaration. Fear has not been banished. It has been given less authority. The heart continues its rhythm, steady, reliable. The keeper does not announce arrivals or departures. Care does not fluctuate with attention. It holds its course. He notices that trust here is not an act. It is a condition that emerges when resistance rests, when effort steps aside. The Psalms do not hurry him forward. They walk with him at the pace of noticing. The idea of going out and coming in drifts through his awareness. Movement that is ordinary, daily, uncelebrated. Being kept applies thereto. Not only in stillness, not only in prayer. This thought does not demand agreement. It simply passes, leaving a faint warmth. The night deepens, but not into darkness, into quiet. Listening becomes less focused, more spacious. The sense of slipping feels distant now, like a remembered concern rather than a present threat. Balance continues without comment. Breath slows again, not dramatically, naturally. The words do not conclude. They continue to move forward, gently, carrying awareness with them. As attention loosens further and the listening carries on, the night holds its quiet without effort. He does not feel asked to enter it. He finds himself already there. Light is present, though it does not assert itself. Not a beam or a point, but a mild awareness that something is near enough to guide. Light for my path. The fragment moves through him, not as instruction, but as memory settling into place. He does not look for it directly. When he tries, it recedes. When he stops trying, it remains. The sense of guidance is subtle. It does not point or direct. It allows the next step to feel possible, without insisting it be taken. The body notices first. A quiet confidence in standing, in shifting weight from one foot to the other. The mind follows later, slower. It loosens its need to see ahead. The night air feels less thick now. Not thinner, exactly. More breathable. He remembers how often light has been associated with clarity, with answers, with resolution. This light offers none of that. It offers companionship. The phrase, "The Lord is my light," drifts through him, incomplete, without its familiar ending. It does not need to be finished to be felt. Darkness does not retreat. It remains wide and gentle. Light does not compete with it. They coexist without argument. He notices how the eyes soften when they are not straining to adjust. Vision becomes peripheral. Awareness spreads. The night does not feel empty anymore. It feels inhabited, though not crowded. Presence without intrusion. There is a memory of fear somewhere, associated with darkness. It surfaces briefly, then dissolves, as if it has nothing to attach to. Fear here finds no sharp edges. Whom shall I fear? Once echoed loudly in him. Now it arrives as a question that does not require an answer. The heart listens, not for danger, for rhythm. The sounds of the night arrange themselves differently. They no longer demand interpretation. They simply occur. He notices the difference between watching for threat and being attentive. One tightens, the other opens. This attention feels open. The light does not grow brighter. It becomes more trusted, familiar enough to lean toward without thinking. There is a sense of being seen without being examined, known without being measured. The gaze that rests without taking. In the secret place, the phrase appears faintly, though it does not settle into image. It feels more like atmosphere than location. He does not imagine walls or shelter, only nearness. The body begins to respond again. Muscles soften where they had been holding. Breath lengthens in small degrees. Time stretches, then thins. Moments lose their edges. The night becomes less segmented. He recalls how often light has been something to chase, something to reach before it fades. This light does not withdraw when not pursued. It stays patient. The idea of a lamp returns, not as object, but as rhythm. Light that responds to movement, that accompanies rather than precedes. He senses that guidance here is not about destination. It is about remaining oriented, facing generally toward what is steady. The night does not ask him to hurry. It does not ask him to stop. It allows him to be where he is. The phrase, "one thing I ask," passes through him, but the asking feels different now. Less like request, more like alignment. Desire here is quiet. It does not reach outward. It settles inward. The light seems to respond to this settling, not by changing, but by becoming easier to notice, as if attention and presence are learning each other. He feels the weight of the day continuing to release, not all at once, in layers. The memory of labor surfaces briefly, of effort expended, of vigilance maintained. It loosens without commentary. "Unless the Lord watches," returns faintly, and the watching feels like this light, unintrusive, constant. The night sky remains unseen, but he imagines it without strain. Not as vastness, but as order, continuing quietly. The stars do their work without applause. This does not make him feel small. It makes him feel placed. The idea of being surrounded comes and goes, not encircled, included. He does not test the light. He does not step deliberately into darker places to see if it follows. He trusts its nearness without proving it. Trust here feels like a softening rather than a stance, a release of checking, a willingness to let presence be enough. The night deepens again, but it does not thicken. It feels more settled, more lived in. He notices how attention begins to drift inward, not collapsing, drawing gently. The light does not pull focus outward. It allows inwardness to feel safe. Thoughts arise, then slip past. They do not need to be resolved before rest can continue. They are not obstacles. The phrase, "my salvation," flickers, then fades. The word feels larger than this moment. It does not insist on being applied. Here, the need is simpler: to remain, to be accompanied. The body recognizes this simplicity. It responds with ease. The light continues to be present without declaring itself. It does not compete with the night. It belongs within it. Breath continues, uncounted. Awareness softens its grip. Nothing is concluded. The movement carries on quietly, as light and night remain together, and attention drifts further inward, guided without being led. The movement turns gently, without a shift in pace. What has been near continues to be near, only noticed from a different angle. There is a cup again, more clearly felt now, though still not lifted. It rests within reach, steady, unspilled. The cup, the fragment surfaces, and the rest of the thought waits. What it holds is not examined. Gratitude does not need inventory. The presence of enough is sensed without being measured. He remembers how often cups are associated with burden, with cost, with what must be endured. This cup feels different. It does not press. "My cup overflows," once said, with voice raised. Here, the overflow is quieter. It feels like margin. There is no rush to receive it. Nothing is demanded in return. The gift does not watch to see how it will be handled. The idea of portion moves through him. A share. Something allotted, not seized. It feels fitting without explanation. He notices how the body responds to the thought of being provided for. Muscles release in places he had not realized were holding. The chest softens. The night remains still enough to notice these small shifts. Time is wide. The lines have fallen, the psalm once said. Here, they feel less like borders and more like pathways traced gently. They do not enclose. They guide without fencing in. The sense of inheritance lingers, not as future promise, as present belonging. He does not reach for assurance. He allows the feeling to rest where it is. The keeper remains near, though unnamed now. Care has become atmosphere rather than thought. It surrounds without enclosing. He notices how easily the mind wants to secure what feels good, to hold it still, to make it permanent. The cup resists this instinct. It remains given, not owned. It can be set down without loss. There is a memory of table, of shared presence, not detailed, only the sense of being welcome without performance. The night carries this memory without effort. It does not demand clarity. It allows impression. He recalls how blessing is often associated with declaration, with spoken words. Here, blessing feels quieter. It arrives as sufficiency. The phrase "in pleasant places" floats by, but the place is not named. It is not a location. It is a condition. Pleasant does not mean perfect. It means fitting. He notices the difference. The cup remains steady even as attention drifts. It does not require guarding. It does not spill when not watched. This steadiness affects him more than he expects. It suggests that provision does not depend on vigilance. That care continues even when attention wanders. The night feels kind in this way. It holds without insisting. He senses the ground beneath him again, not as something to test, as something to trust. The body follows this trust. Weight settles more fully. Balance becomes unremarkable. He recalls the phrase "my lot," and it feels less like destiny and more like placement. Being where one belongs without needing to argue for it. This belonging does not announce itself. It does not demand loyalty. It simply allows rest. The idea of joy brushes past. Not excitement, a quiet gladness that does not seek expression. It does not need to be named, to be felt. The cup remains present, not central. It is part of the environment now, like the light earlier, trusted without focus. He senses how the Psalms interweave. Provision, protection, guidance. Not as separate themes, but as facets of the same presence. The night receives these facets without needing to arrange them. It allows them to exist together. He does not try to remember the exact wording. Fragments are enough. They carry more than complete sentences. The breath continues to deepen. Not forced, welcomed. Thoughts slow their pace. They lengthen, then thin. The cup remains unemptied. It does not diminish with time. It is not consumed. This suggests a different economy, one where receiving does not deplete, where gratitude does not exhaust. He does not analyze this. It is simply sensed. The night feels more like a dwelling now than a passage, a place to be without moving on immediately. He allows this feeling without clinging. It comes and goes. The words do not gather into conclusion. They continue to drift, carrying the sense of provision forward, as attention loosens further and the quiet deepens without closing. The sense of shelter arrives without edges, not as a place entered, but as an awareness that has been present for some time. He does not step inside it. It is already around him, though around feels too definite, closer than that. Under his wings passes through as a remembered phrase, but no image settles. There are no feathers to picture, no shape to trace, only nearness. This shelter does not close the world out. Sound still travels. Air still moves. It does not ask him to withdraw. It allows him to remain. The night continues its quiet work. Distance and closeness lose some of their meaning. What matters feels nearer than space. He notices how often safety is imagined as enclosure, walls, thickness, barriers that prove their worth by what they exclude. This safety is different. It feels permeable. Nothing is shut out, yet nothing overwhelms. The heart responds to this first. Its rhythm steadies without instruction. It does not speed to check, does not slow to prove calm, just steady. The phrase, "God is our refuge," moves through him again. But refuge here is not hiding. It is orientation, a sense of where to lean when weight shifts. He notices how the body leans into this without thought. The spine eases. The neck releases its small vigilance. The shelter feels less like cover and more like closeness, like being stood beside rather than placed behind something. The night does not resist this closeness. It accommodates it easily. There is a memory of storms, of waters rising, of ground that did not feel secure. The Psalms carry these images, but here they are distant. They do not press forward. "Though the earth give way," once thundered. Now the words pass softly, their volume lowered. They do not insist on rehearsal. The shelter does not deny that storms exist. It simply does not require him to stand in one now. The idea of a fortress drifts through, but it does not harden into stone. It remains metaphor, then dissolves. What stays is the sense of being held without being trapped. He notices how this holding differs from grasping. Nothing is clenched. Nothing is pinned in place. The shelter adapts to his breathing. It expands and contracts with him, or perhaps he does with it. The distinction fades. He senses how often fear tightens by imagining exit routes, by calculating escape. Here, there is no urge to flee. Remaining feels possible. The night grows quieter, though not empty. There is still movement somewhere. It does not demand attention. The phrase "a very present help" surfaces, and the word present lingers. Not future, not recalled. Here. This presence does not ask to be acknowledged. It does not diminish if unnoticed. It simply is without claiming that word. He realizes that shelter like this allows vulnerability without exposure. A paradox that does not need to be solved. The body rests into this allowance. The hands loosen their curl. The face softens. He becomes aware of how much effort has been spent bracing. Against noise. Against expectation. The shelter does not congratulate him for arriving. It does not mark a threshold crossed. It receives him as if he has been here all along. The Psalms do not argue for this safety. They speak of it as known to reign, as something returned to. Be still is remembered. But stillness here is not command. It is effect. Movement slows because it can, not because it must. The night holds this slowing easily. It does not grow impatient. It does not hurry him towards sleep. Sleep is not required. Rest is already happening in smaller ways. The shelter does not dim awareness. It clarifies what can be released. What does not need guarding now? Thoughts still arise. They come with less urgency. They pass more quickly. He notices how silence has shifted. Earlier, it felt unfamiliar. Now it feels companionable, not something to fill, something to be with. The shelter does not ask him to name it. Names feel unnecessary here. Function matters more than definition. He feels how protection can be felt without being proved, without recounting dangers avoided, without tallying outcomes. This realization does not settle into doctrine. It remains sensation. The night remains night. No sudden dawn presses in. Light remains faint, steady enough. The shelter does not glow. It does not shine. It simply continues. The sense of being accompanied deepens, though it does not intensify. It spreads, like warmth that reaches places unnoticed at first. He does not attempt to hold on to this feeling. He lets it move through him at its own pace. It lingers where it will. The Psalms continue their quiet weaving. Refuge, keeper, portion, light. They overlap without competing. The shelter holds all of this without strain. It does not collapse under meaning. It remains open. Breath continues to slow. Attention drifts inward again. Not withdrawing, just turning slightly. The night accepts this inward turn. It does not interrupt. Nothing here concludes. The shelter remains present without fixing him in place, and the listening carries on gently as awareness loosens and the quiet deepens without closing. Waiting arrives without announcement, not as pause but as a change in texture. Time loosens its hold. Minutes no longer press forward. They widen, then thin, then drift. He waits, might have been said, but waiting here is not posture. It is atmosphere, a way of being present without reaching. The night supports this easily. It has always known how to wait. It does not count. He notices how often waiting has felt tense in other moments, a holding of breath, an anticipation sharpened by fear of delay. This waiting feels different. It is not oriented toward outcome. It does not lean forward. The body understands this first. Muscles soften in places that once braced for movement. The feet do not prepare to step. Stillness happens without instruction, not rigid, responsive. The phrase, "my soul waits," passes through him, but the word soul feels broad here, not separate from body, not hovering above it. Waiting belongs to all of him. Breath, thought, attention. The night offers no deadline, no signal that something should be happening instead. It allows the moment to remain unfinished. He senses how much effort has been spent elsewhere trying to arrive at clarity, at resolution. Here, arrival is not required. Presence is enough. The idea of trust begins to breathe, not declared, not defended. It appears as the absence of hurry. He notices how waiting often exposes impatience, the subtle need to control what comes next. That need feels quieter now. It does not vanish. It rests. The Psalms do not rush him through this space. They linger with verbs that stretch. Wait, dwell, abide. These words do not demand explanation. They describe a rhythm already underway. The night deepens slightly, not darker, just more settled. Fewer edges remain sharp. Attention spreads. He realizes that waiting here is not passive. It is receptive, listening without scanning. The keeper remains near, though unmentioned. Care has receded into background hum. It does not need to be checked. The mind drifts toward memory, then releases it. Thoughts form, then dissolve. None require pursuit. Waiting creates room for this. Room without vacancy. The breath lengthens again, not deliberately. It follows the tempo of the moment. In, out. There is a sense that something could come, but there is no pressure for it to do so now. Possibility exists without urgency. The phrase hope surfaces faintly, but it does not sharpen into expectation. Hope here feels like openness, like space that is not sealed. He notices how waiting has softened fear, not removed it, given it less surface to cling to. Fear requires friction. This waiting offers little. The night holds this gently. It does not rush toward dawn. It allows darkness to be what it is. The sense of being watched over continues, but without focus. It no longer occupies attention. It supports from beneath. Waiting becomes easier to inhabit. It feels less like effort and more like rest with eyes open. Rest that does not require sleep. The body sinks slightly, not downward, but inward. Weight redistributes. Tension unwinds. He does not label this as peace. Labels would tighten it. He lets it remain unnamed. The psalms move quietly within him, their cadence matching this waiting. They do not push. They accompany. The night accepts the slow rhythm. It mirrors it without echo. Waiting here does not feel endless, nor does it feel measured. It exists outside counting. He allows himself to remain, not to arrive somewhere else, not to prepare for what follows, just to remain. The listening grows less focused, more spacious. Sounds drift in and out, thought loosens further. Breath continues its gentle work. Nothing resolves, nothing concludes. Waiting carries on quietly, deepening without thickening, as attention drifts inward, and the night continues to hold space without asking for movement. The path does not appear all at once. It suggests itself in small allowances, a sense of where the next step could rest. He does not see it ahead. He feels it beneath. A subtle invitation to stand where he already is. The path of life comes back to him, not as direction, but as tone. Life here feels less like motion and more like orientation, facing generally toward what sustains. The night does not map anything out. It offers no horizon. It allows him to feel his way forward without asking him to move. He notices how often paths are imagined as lines drawn clearly, bordered and firm. This path feels more like a field, wide enough to wander within. There is no sense of being lost, nor of having arrived, only the awareness of being placed. The body responds with a quiet confidence. Feet settle more fully into the ground. The need to test each shift fades. He senses that direction here is not about speed. It is about alignment, being turned, even slightly, toward what gives life. The phrase, "in your presence," surfaces gently. Presence here is not a location entered. It is the condition of the path itself. Where he stands, presence already is. The night receives this without comment. It does not brighten to confirm it. It does not darken to challenge it. He remembers how paths often carry expectation, pressure to progress, to measure distance covered. This path carries none of that. It allows standing still to be part of the way. The sense of being guided returns, though it does not guide him away from where he is. It steadies his orientation. It quiets the urge to search. He notices how the mind relaxes when it is not required to plan, when the next step is not demanded. Thought becomes less sharp. The Psalms move softly here, speaking of fullness, of joy, but the words do not swell. They remain gentle. They do not insist on being felt completely. Joy here feels like ease of placement, like not having to justify being where one is. He allows this feeling to pass through without holding it. It comes, then thins. That is enough. The path remains present even as attention drifts. It does not disappear when not watched. It does not punish wandering thought. This reliability affects him quietly. It suggests that direction does not depend on constant awareness. That care continues even when focus loosens. The night grows more familiar again. Less something to move through, more something to be with. He notices how inward, attention and outward awareness begin to overlap. There is less distinction between them. Both feel equally safe. The phrase, "at your right hand," drifts by, and the nearness it suggests lingers. Not grasping, not pulling, just close enough to orient by. He senses how often he has rushed paths in the past, pushed for clarity, demanded signs. Here, the path offers none. And yet, he does not feel abandoned. The ground beneath remains trustworthy. Balance continues without comment. The sense of slipping does not return. The path does not narrow. It does not widen dramatically. It simply remains available. He realizes that life here feels less like forward movement and more like being kept in motion even while still. Breath moves, attention shifts. This motion is enough. The night accepts this quiet understanding. It does not interrupt. It does not test. He allows his gaze to soften again, inward and outward at once. Vision blurs gently. Awareness spreads. The Psalms do not resolve into instruction. They remain lived words, unfolding as presence rather than text. The path continues to be felt rather than seen. It does not require naming. It carries him without carrying him away. Breath continues its steady rhythm. Thought thins further. Waiting and guidance blend. Nothing is concluded here. The path remains open, not leading away, not arriving. As listening continues and attention slips gently inward, carried forward without insistence. The eyes lift almost without decision, not searching, not scanning, just releasing the downward pull. I lift up my eyes, the fragment comes back, quiet and familiar. And the lifting feels less like looking and more like allowing space. The gaze does not fix on anything. It opens. What is above is not clearly pictured. No reminder of distance arrives, only the sense that attention can rise without strain. The night receives this lifted gaze easily. It does not demand focus. It does not offer spectacle. He notices how often looking upward has carried effort, expectation, the hope of sign or answer. This looking is different. It carries no demand. It rests in openness. The body responds again. The chest lifts slightly. The breath finds more room. The question of help drifts through him. Where does my help come from? The words feel less like inquiry now, and more like orientation. Help does not arrive from a direction. It does not descend. It is already present, steady as the breath. The lifted eyes do not remain fixed. They soften, then lower again, without loss. Nothing essential is missed. He senses that lifting here is not about escape. It is about widening, allowing attention to be less compressed. The night seems to widen with him, not expanding outward, but becoming more spacious inwardly. There is more room to breathe. He notices how vigilance eases when attention is not narrowed. The constant checking loosens. The mind rests more easily in its own place. The phrase maker of heaven and earth passes through faintly, but it does not carry weight. It does not require scale. It suggests continuity rather than size. What is made continues, quietly, without his oversight. This realization does not diminish him. It supports him. The lifted gaze returns inward now, not turning away from the world, settling deeper within it. He feels how the body mirrors this movement. The spine lengthens slightly. The neck releases its small tensions. There is no instruction here. No effort applied, only response. The night grows quiet in a new way. Less unfamiliar, more companionable. He notices how attention drifts more freely now. Thoughts arise without urgency. They pass without insistence. The psalms continue to move beneath awareness, like water beneath a surface. They are not quoted. They are felt. The lifted eyes have changed something subtle. Not dramatically, enough. The sense of being watched over remains, but it no longer draws focus. It supports from below awareness, like ground that does not need testing. He allows his eyes to close if they wish, or to remain open. Both feel equally possible. The night does not favor one over the other. It allows both. He senses that help here is not interruption. It does not arrive with urgency. It remains steady, consistent. The lifted gaze has become a habit of the heart rather than a movement of the eyes, an openness that does not strain upward, a readiness that does not tense. The body rests more fully into this openness. Weight redistributes again. Breath continues its gentle work. There is no need to hold this posture. It holds itself. It fades in and out naturally. The night carries this movement forward without comment. It does not mark progress. It does not ask for repetition. Attention drifts inward once more. The lifted quality remains faintly, like memory in the muscles, like ease that can be returned to without effort. Nothing resolves. Nothing closes. The gaze, lifted and released, has left its trace, and the listening carries on quietly, widening and softening as awareness continues to draw inward without hurry. Sound has not left. It has simply rearranged itself, as if finding a gentler order. The night carries layers of noise, near, far, remembered. None of them demand response. They exist without pressing inward. Stillness begins to be felt, not as absence, but as space between. Space wide enough for sound to move without collision. "Be still," the fragment returns, though no command is heard. Stillness here is not imposed. It emerges when nothing is pushed forward. He notices how often quiet has been confused with silence, with emptiness. This quiet is fuller than that. Sound arrives, then dissolves. A passing vehicle, a distant voice. Between these, something remains. Not void. Presence? The heart listens differently now. Not to identify, to receive. The body mirrors this shift. Small muscles release their vigilance. The jaw softens again. The night does not require him to sort sound from meaning. It allows him to hear without interpretation. This feels new, though it has always been possible. The phrase "God is in the midst" drifts through, barely audible. Midst feels important, not above, not beyond. Here, within. The sounds of the world do not threaten this center. They orbit it. They pass through its edges. He senses how stillness can exist even while sound continues. How calm does not require muting the world, only not being pulled by it. This realization does not arrive as thought. It is felt in the body. In the way, breath no longer tightens when noise appears. The night holds this balance gently, sound and stillness sharing space. neither competing. The psalms move quietly beneath this awareness, their cadence matching the ebb and flow of sound. They do not rise above it. They blend. He remembers how often silence has felt uncomfortable, too exposed, too revealing. This stillness does not expose. It shelters. The idea of refuge returns, but now it feels internal. Not something entered, something recognized. The night accepts this recognition without marking it. It does not pause. It continues. The body feels heavier in a comforting way, not weighed down, settled. He notices how attention no longer jumps toward each sound. It remains where it is, open, receiving without chasing. The phrase, "though the earth trembles," surfaces faintly, but the trembling does not reach here. Here, there is room. Stillness is not fragile. It does not shatter when sound touches it. It absorbs, then releases. The night demonstrates this quietly. A sound passes. Stillness remains. He allows himself to trust this pattern, not by deciding to, by noticing it continue. The Psalms do not explain this stillness. They inhabit it. They allow it to be known through experience rather than declaration. The sense of being kept returns again, now intertwined with quiet. Care feels like this stillness, steady, unreactive, present without urgency. He feels how the body responds to this safety. Breath slows further. Thoughts thin. The night grows deeper, not darker. More settled, more familiar. Sound continues to arrive. Stillness continues to receive it. Neither interrupts the other. This coexistence eases something deep. A long-held readiness relaxes. A subtle vigilance unwinds. The idea of rest moves through him. Not sleep yet. Rest with awareness. The Psalms do not hurry him toward anything else. They remain with him here, in the midst of sound and stillness, sharing space. The listening becomes less focused, more diffuse. Attention spreads gently. Nothing is concluded. Stillness continues to grow familiar, without becoming fixed. As sound comes and goes, and awareness drifts inward, carried forward quietly into the next movement. Strength does not announce itself. It gathers quietly, almost unnoticed, like breath returning after a pause. There is no surge, no posture taken, only the sense that something is available without being summoned. Be strong, once sounded like command. Here, strength feels different. It does not brace. It steadies. The night holds this strength without naming it. It allows it to exist without display. Nothing is required to prove it is there. He notices how often strength has been confused with effort, with holding against pressure, with tightening the body in readiness. This strength asks for none of that. It arrives as ease, as the ability to remain present without strain. The body recognizes it immediately. Shoulders rest lower. The spine finds its own alignment. The heart follows. Its rhythm continues without hurry. Steady, unforced. The phrase, "My heart shall not fear," passes through softly, but fear is not challenged directly. It is simply no longer central. Remains at the edge, quieter. Strength here does not eliminate fear. It gives it less weight. The night accepts this without commentary. It does not test the strength. It does not require demonstration. He senses how courage can be loud, how it often demands recognition. This courage remains invisible. It does not need witness. The Psalms speak of armies and threats, but those images stay distant now. They do not press forward. What remains is the feeling beneath them. Strength as steadiness, as the ability to stay. The body sinks slightly again, not downward, but inward. Weight distributes more evenly. Balance feels ordinary. The mind notices that it is not rehearsing responses, not planning defenses, Thought becomes less sharp. The night grows quieter around this steadiness. Not silent, supportive. The phrase, "wait for the Lord," drifts through faintly. But waiting and strength feel linked here. Waiting does not weaken. It supports. He senses how strength like this allows waiting to continue without fatigue, without impatience, without collapse. The Psalms do not frame this as achievement. They describe it as condition, something entered rather than attained. The body responds again. Breath lengthens. The chest softens further. Strength settles into the muscles not as tension, but as readiness without urgency. The ability to respond if needed, without expecting the need. The night does not provoke. It allows this readiness to rest. He notices how strength often tightens the jaw, firms the gaze. Here, the jaw remains loose, the gaze soft. This strength does not narrow attention. It widens it. It allows awareness to include more without becoming overwhelmed. The phrase, "the Lord is my strength," brushes past, but the emphasis falls on my, not possession, relation. Strength is shared, borrowed, given. This understanding does not crystallize into thought. It remains sensation. The night carries this sensation forward easily. It does not press for conclusion. It does not announce arrival. He feels how much effort has been spent elsewhere trying to be strong, holding, enduring. Here, strength feels like permission to stop doing that, to rest within something already steady. The Psalms do not celebrate this moment. They continue walking with him. They keep their pace slow. The body remains receptive. The mind remains open. Nothing tightens. Strength here does not demand action. It allows stillness to be sustained. It supports quiet. The night remains unchanged, yet something within him has softened, not weakened, settled. Breath continues. Awareness drifts inward again. The sense of strength remains, not as focus, but as support beneath attention. Nothing concludes. Strength stays present without becoming fixed. As listening carries on, and the quiet deepens gently, without insistence or end. The sense of building arrives quietly, without sound of tools or visible progress. Nothing rises suddenly. Nothing is completed. Unless the Lord builds the house, passes through him as a remembered fragment, and the image does not settle into structure. There are no walls to picture, no roof to imagine. The house here feels inward, a space being formed by use rather than design, by presence rather than plan. He notices how often building has felt like effort, measured work, steps counted and checked. This building feels different. It happens while attention drifts, while breath continues on its own. The night holds this unseen work easily. It does not demand proof. It does not ask for progress reports. He senses that something is being shaped, though he cannot say what. The shaping does not pull focus. It continues without supervision. The body responds as if to a place becoming familiar. Muscles rest more fully. Posture eases. The heart feels less guarded, not exposed, at home. The phrase, "they labor in vain," once carried weight, but here it softens. Labor is not dismissed. It is simply not required now. The house is not being reminded of its purpose. It is being inhabited. He notices how much of life has been spent preparing spaces rather than dwelling in them, cleaning, arranging, waiting for the right moment. This house does not wait. It receives him as he is. The night does not interrupt this receiving. It allows it to deepen gradually, quietly. The Psalms speak of watchmen, of guarding cities through the night. Here, watching feels different, less like vigilance, more like presence that does not sleep. Care continues without effort. The house does not need to be defended. It is already held. He senses how rest and building intertwine here, how something solid can form without strain, how permanence can grow out of ease. This does not make sense to the mind at first. The mind loosens its need to understand. It allows the experience to stand. The body seems to recognize this pattern. It settles further. Weight finds its place. The night becomes more interior now, not closing in, drawing inward. The house feels less like container and more like atmosphere. A sense of belonging that moves with him, that does not require staying still. Children are mentioned somewhere in the psalm, but here they feel like continuation rather than responsibility. Life extending beyond the moment, quietly promised. This thought does not ask him to plan. It passes gently, leaves warmth behind. He notices how security has shifted. It is no longer something to achieve. It is something unfolding. The house continues to be built without noise. Walls do not rise. Foundations do not shake. Instead, there is a deepening sense of ease, of being placed within something that holds, of not needing to rush away. The night holds this ease without comment. It does not mark milestones. It does not announce completion. He allows his attention to drift again. The house remains. It does not disappear when unnoticed. Breath continues its quiet rhythm. Thought thins further. The sense of dwelling grows more familiar without becoming fixed. Nothing here concludes. The house continues to be built as he rests within it, unseen and unmeasured, while listening carries on and awareness slips gently inward, held without insistence. The night keeps watch without announcing itself. It does not stand alert. It remains. There is a sense of being observed, but not examined. Awareness without scrutiny. Care without assessment. He who keeps Israel once echoed with collective weight. Here, the keeping feels personal, though unnamed. Close enough to be felt without attention. Sleep comes and goes in small waves, not fully arriving, not fully withheld. The body drifts toward it, then rises slightly again. This movement feels safe. Nothing is lost in the drifting. The idea of night watches surfaces. Long hours where nothing happens outwardly, where care continues without signal. He senses how often watching has been associated with strain. Eyes forced open. Readiness clenched. This watching feels different. It does not tire. It does not narrow focus. The night seems to carry this watchfulness itself, as if the darkness knows how to hold attention without effort, as if vigilance has softened into presence. He notices how easily the body releases when it is not responsible for staying alert. The small muscles around the eyes relax. The breath deepens again. The phrase, "will neither slumber nor sleep," returns, but it does not create contrast with his own drifting. It supports it. One rests because another remains aware. This thought does not sharpen. It settles. The night does not rush him toward sleep. It allows half-rest, allows awareness to blur without disappearing. Dreamlike images flicker at the edge of thought. They do not form stories. They pass like reflections on water. The body remains anchored. The ground beneath still felt. Balance maintained even in stillness. He senses that being kept through the night is not about preventing all disturbance. It is about continuity, about presence that does not withdraw. The Psalms do not dramatize this. They speak of it as fact of life, as something that happens quietly every night. The idea of morning drifts through briefly, but it does not pull forward. The night is sufficient. It does not need to be hurried through. The watch continues without effort. No eyes strain. No alarms wait to sound. He allows himself to rest more fully into this awareness. Not surrendering, allowing. The night holds him as he drifts, attentive enough to notice the gentle sway between waking and rest. This sway feels kind, permissive. Nothing is demanded of him here. Not sleep, not alertness, just presence. The watching does not feel external now. It feels woven into the night itself, into the quiet rhythm of breath and pause. The body responds with deeper ease. Weight settles again. Thoughts slow to a gentle crawl. The Psalms continue their quiet companionship. They do not speak loudly over the night. They move with it. The sense of being kept remains steady beneath awareness. It does not recede when attention drifts. It does not intensify when noticed. The night remains night. Watching continues. Rest ebbs and flows without concern. Nothing concludes. The watch carries on softly, holding the drifting attention as it moves between wakefulness and rest, and the listening continues without end or urgency. A place of safety becomes noticeable without arrival, not entered, recognized. It is not marked by boundary or sign. It feels like a loosening of the need to defend, a quiet permission to remain. God is our refuge, returns faintly. But refuge here is not retreat. It is nearness that does not require hiding, closeness that does not press. The night receives this sense of safety easily. It does not challenge it. It does not test its strength. He notices how safety often arrives with conditions, rules to follow, stillness to maintain. This safety offers none. It holds without bargaining. It allows movement within it. The body responds again, subtly. The stomach softens. Breath deepens without effort. The phrase, "a very present help," lingers, and the word present continues to echo. Not future, not recalled. Here. This presence does not intrude. It does not interrupt thought. It supports from beneath awareness. He senses how often safety has been confused with certainty, with knowing what will happen next. This safety requires no foresight. It exists without explanation. The night grows quieter again, though sound remains. The quiet feels thicker now, more companionable, less unfamiliar. The body feels less exposed. Not because threats have vanished, because attention no longer scans for them. The Psalms speak of shaking earth and roaring waters. Those images stay distant. They do not approach. What remains is the space where safety is felt without reference to danger. A place that does not define itself by contrast. He notices how the mind rests when it is not rehearsing escape. Thought becomes softer, more spacious. The sense of safety does not tighten into assurance. It remains gentle, flexible. It does not insist on permanence. It does not demand belief. The night holds this lightly. It does not freeze the moment. It allows it to shift and breathe. The body settles deeper again. Weight distributes evenly. Balance feels natural. The phrase "under his wings" returns. But now it feels more like warmth than cover. A sense of being within reach rather than beneath. Proximity without pressure. He allows this warmth without clinging. It moves through him slowly. It does not need to stay. The Psalms do not close this safety into doctrine. They leave it lived, felt rather than stated. The night continues to offer this space without comment. It does not announce security. It simply allows it to be sensed. He notices how safety here does not isolate. It connects. It allows awareness to widen rather than narrow. The body responds with ease. The jaw releases. The brow smooths. There is no signal that something has been achieved. No marker of arrival. Safety remains fluid. The night remains night. Light remains faint, steady. Nothing sharpens. Attention drifts inward again. The sense of safety moves with it, not as focus, as background support. Nothing concludes. The safe space remains open, not sealed, as listening continues. And awareness slips further inward, carried forward gently without insistence. The heart turns its attention inward, not suddenly, not with intent. It listens the way one listens in the quiet, without expecting reply. There is a subtle shift, as if the center of awareness has moved slightly closer. Not deeper, exactly. More intimate. "Listen, my heart," might have been spoken once. Now the listening happens without words. It waits without forming questions. The night supports this inward turn. It does not pull attention outward. It allows focus to soften and gather. He notices how rarely the heart is allowed to listen without being tasked, without being asked to respond or decide. Here, it is free to simply notice. The rhythm within becomes more audible. Not sound, but pattern. A steady movement that does not need monitoring. The Psalms speak of seeking, of faces turned toward presence. Here, seeking feels quieter, less like search, more like remaining open. The heart does not strain forward. It rests in readiness. He senses how inward listening differs from self-examination. There is no inventory taken, no evaluation made. It is closer to companionship, being with what is already there. The body mirrors this listening. The chest softens. Breath flows without interruption. The night feels closer now, not enclosing, but attentive. As if it, too, is listening, holding space without interference. The phrase, "my heart says," passes through faintly, but nothing follows it. No instruction arrives, no demand. This absence does not feel empty. It feels spacious. He notices how often silence has been filled quickly, out of habit, out of discomfort. Here, silence is allowed to remain. The heart listens into that silence, not to fill it, to be with it. The Psalms do not rush this moment. They linger with verbs that wait, that turn, that remain. The inward listening does not isolate him from the night. It connects him more fully to it. Outer and inner quiet begin to align. The body rests further into this alignment. Muscles release their last small holds. The breath slows again. He senses how listening can be an act of trust. Not trusting what will be heard. Trusting that listening itself is safe. This trust does not announce itself. It settles quietly, almost unnoticed. The night does not interrupt. It allows the heart to continue listening without commentary, without signal. Thoughts still arise. They pass through the listening space without sticking. They are not pushed away. The heart does not argue with them. It lets them move on. The Psalms speak of enduring things, of waiting through seasons. Here, endurance feels gentle, like remaining present without strain. The inward listening deepens slightly, not heavier, more receptive. He feels how much effort has been spent listening outward for cues, for expectations. Here, there is nothing to meet, no standard to satisfy. The heart rests into this freedom. It listens without urgency, without goal. The night continues to hold this listening. It does not shift. It does not demand closure. Breath continues. Awareness softens further. The inward turn remains, gentle and open. Nothing concludes. The heart keeps listening, quietly, as attention drifts inward, and the night carries this listening forward, unhurried and unresolved. The light has not changed, yet it feels more familiar now. Not brighter, steadier, as if trust has learned its outline. It no longer draws attention to itself. It does not need to be noticed to remain. It simply continues, present within the night. Light. The word returns faintly, but without contrast. Not set against darkness, belonging within it. The night receives this light easily. There is no struggle for space, no competition for presence. He notices how earlier the light felt tentative, something to look for. Now it feels like a companion that has been walking beside him all along. Recognized rather than discovered, the body responds with a quiet ease. The eyes soften further. The muscles around them rest. This steadiness allows attention to wander, without fear of losing direction. Focus loosens. Orientation remains. The Psalms speak of guidance repeated over time, of paths walked again and again. Here, guidance feels less like instruction and more like familiarity, knowing where one is without checking. The light does not point ahead. It steadies the present. It makes this moment sufficient. He senses how trust grows not by proof, but by continued presence. By noticing that what remains does so quietly, without demanding acknowledgement. The night deepens into this steadiness. It no longer feels unknown. It feels inhabited. The phrase, "The Lord is my light," surfaces again. But now it feels lived rather than remembered. Not quoted, experienced. This experience does not swell. It does not become dramatic. It remains gentle. The body settles further. Breath continues its slow rhythm. The chest rises and falls without effort. He notices how light like this allows rest without disorientation, without fear of drifting too far. There is room to let go. The night supports this letting go. It does not close in. It remains open. Thoughts arise less frequently now. When they do, they feel softer. They do not pull attention away for long. The light continues to be present, even when thought wanders. It does not withdraw. It does not flicker. This reliability deepens trust quietly, not as conclusion, as habit. The Psalms do not insist on certainty here. They speak of walking, of dwelling, of remaining. Ongoing verbs. The light fits these verbs well. It accompanies. It does not lead away. He senses how earlier vigilance has dissolved into familiarity, no longer scanning, simply being. The night feels less like a passage to move through, more like a place that can be known, a place that knows him. The light does not define the night. It rests within it. Both continue together. He allows attention to drift inward again. The light remains as background, a steady presence that does not demand focus. Nothing is achieved here. Nothing is resolved. The steadiness simply continues. Breath deepens slightly. Awareness softens further. The night and light move together without friction. Nothing concludes. The steady light remains quietly present. As listening carries on and attention continues to draw inward, held gently within the familiar dark, trust begins to learn the shape of breath, not formed by thought, not named. Inhale arrives. Exhale follows. Neither is held. What once felt fragile now feels practiced, though no practice was assigned. The body knows how to do this. It always has. Trust. The word moves through faintly, but it does not settle as instruction. It dissolves into rhythm, into continuation. The night holds this rhythm without comment. It does not regulate. It does not interrupt. He notices how trust has often felt like decision, a choice made against uncertainty, a stance taken. This trust feels different. It is not chosen. It is permitted. The body responds immediately. Breath lengthens slightly. The pause between breaths grows gentle. There is no need to monitor it. The rhythm carries itself. Effort steps aside. The Psalms speak of leaning, of resting weight somewhere reliable. Here, Leaning happens inwardly, into the breath itself. The night supports this leaning. It does not require vigilance to remain safe. It allows release. He senses how trust like this reduces noise without silencing it. The background quiets. The foreground softens. Thoughts still appear, but they no longer interrupt breath. They move around it, they pass. The phrase, "In peace I will lie down," returns briefly. But lying down is not required. Peace here is not posture. It is cadence. Breath sets the pace. Slow. Even. The body recognizes this cadence as familiar. Something remembered without memory. A return without movement. The night deepens slightly again. Not darker, just more interior. Attention folds inward. The outer world remains present, but less demanding. He notices how trust like this does not eliminate awareness. It softens its edges, allows it to rest. The Psalms do not rush this moment. They linger in it. They breathe with it. Trust here does not feel bold. It feels quiet, like staying. The body continues to follow breath. Shoulders settle further. The face loosens. There is no instruction to sleep, no expectation of wakefulness. Both remain possible. The night accepts either. It does not prefer one over the other. Trust continues to learn this rhythm, in, out. The breath does not need to deepen further. It is enough as it is. Regular, present. He senses how often trust has been tied to outcome, to what will happen next. This trust has no such attachment. It rests entirely in the present moment of breath, in the next inhale, in the next release. The night holds this learning gently. It does not test it. It does not withdraw support. The Psalms continue their quiet companionship. They do not interpret the moment. They inhabit it. Trust settles into the body not as concept, but as ease, as permission to let breath arrive unforced, as permission to let it go. Nothing resolves. Nothing completes. Breath continues. Trust continues learning its rhythm. Attention drifts inward again, carried softly by the steady rise and fall, as the night remains open and unhurried. Fear does not leave abruptly. It loosens, almost without notice, like a knot eased by warmth rather than force. No fear, the words pass through faintly, but they do not stand as declaration. They hover, then soften. Fear remains nearby, but quieter. The night does not confront it. It does not argue. It allows space where fear has less to grip. He notices how fear has often been loudest when resisted, when named and pushed away. Here, it is neither welcomed nor opposed. It is allowed to rest at the edge. The body responds first. The small tensions behind the eyes ease. The stomach releases its subtle holding. Fear had lived there for a while. Now it finds less structure to cling to. The Psalms speak of courage, of hearts made firm. Here, firmness feels gentle, like steadiness that does not harden. The night supports this gentleness. It does not provoke reaction. It does not rush him into bravery. He senses how fear diminishes when attention is not fixed upon it, when presence widens, when breath remains unhurried. The phrase, "I will not fear," drifts through, but it does not settle as promise. It passes like a cloud thinning, leaving more sky than before. The body notices the extra space. Breath moves with less interruption. The chest feels lighter. Fear has not been expelled. It has been unseated, no longer central. The night remains unchanged. Its quiet continues. This continuity reassures without statement. He recognizes how fear often demands certainty, proof that nothing will go wrong. Here, no proof is offered, and yet fear eases. The Psalms do not deny danger. They speak of it honestly, but they do not keep it in focus. The focus here is presence. Steady, unreactive. The body settles again. Weight distributes evenly. The urge to brace fades further. Fear, when it arises, passes through more quickly now. It does not linger. It does not spiral. The knight accepts this movement without comment. It does not label it progress. It does not mark it as victory. He allows himself to notice the difference without grasping it, without trying to keep it. It comes and goes. The psalms continue to walk beside him, their tone steady, unhurried. They do not escalate. They do not conclude. The space where fear once pressed feels wider, more breathable, not empty. Something else lives there now. Not confidence exactly. Allowance. The body recognizes allowance as safety. It responds with deeper ease. Breath continues its gentle rhythm. Fear does not define this moment. It does not disappear entirely. It simply loses authority. The knight holds this shift quietly. It does not shine a light on it. It lets it remain understated. Attention drifts inward again. Fear drifts outward. Neither is fixed. Nothing is resolved. Fear continues to loosen without being forced. As presence widens and listening carries on gently, without demand or conclusion. Goodness moves through the night without sound. It does not stop to announce itself. It passes like warmth, noticed only after it has already begun. Good. The word appears faintly, not defined, not weighed. It does not insist on explanation. It does not require proof. He senses how often goodness has been expected to arrive with clarity, with visible change. This goodness is quieter. It feels more like presence than event. The night receives it easily. It does not brighten to mark it. It does not pause to acknowledge it. The body notices first, a gentle easing, a sense that something supportive has moved through without disturbance. The Psalms speak of goodness following, of mercy not far behind. Here, following does not feel like pursuit. It feels like accompaniment. Goodness is not ahead or behind. It is alongside. He notices how this realization softens expectation. Nothing needs to be reached. Nothing needs to be caught up to. The night continues its quiet rhythm. Sound drifts in and out. Stillness holds between. Goodness moves through all of this without resistance. It does not compete with noise. It does not retreat from silence. The phrase, all the days, passes through faintly, but time does not stretch forward. Days feel gathered rather than lined up, present as continuity rather than sequence. This does not overwhelm him. It steadies him. The body rests more deeply into the moment. Breath remains slow and even. The chest rises and falls without effort. He notices how goodness like this does not demand gratitude. It does not ask to be named. It does not diminish if unnoticed. The Psalms do not celebrate it loudly. They trust it quietly. They allow it to remain understated. The night feels kinder now, though nothing has changed outwardly. This kindness is not sentimental. It is stable. He senses how often goodness has been measured against difficulty. Here, it does not compete. It coexists. The body responds with ease. The hands loosen again. The face softens further. Goodness does not remove memory of hardship. It does not erase fatigue. It simply moves through without needing to resolve anything. The night accepts this movement. It does not hold on to it. It allows it to pass and remain at the same time. He notices how attention no longer searches for meaning. It rests in experience. This rest feels sufficient. The Psalms continue their quiet companionship. They do not define goodness. They live with it. Goodness remains gentle. It does not press. It does not withdraw. The sense of being accompanied deepens slightly, not intensifying, settling. The night continues to hold space. Nothing is concluded. Goodness passes by and continues, quietly present as listening carries on and awareness drifts inward without hurry. Belonging begins to feel like motion rather than place. Not anchored, carried. It does not settle into one image. It shifts gently, adapting to breath, to attention, to the quiet that continues to open. Dwell, the word surfaces faintly. But dwelling here does not mean staying still. It means being accompanied wherever awareness rests. The night receives this sense of belonging easily. It does not ask where he has come from. It does not ask where he will go. He notices how often belonging has been tied to arrival, to finding the right place, to meeting a condition. This belonging feels different. It moves with him. It does not require location. The body responds by easing further into itself. There is no need to hold posture, no need to orient outward. The Psalms speak of dwelling in the house, of remaining in presence. Here, the house has no walls. The presence does not confine. Belonging becomes a quiet continuity, something that persists even as attention drifts. Even as thought thins, the night seems to move with this continuity. It does not feel empty or vast. It feels inhabited. He senses how belonging like this allows wandering without fear of exile. Attention can drift inward, outward, sideways. Nothing essential is lost. The phrase forever flickers briefly, but it does not stretch time forward. It folds time inward, makes duration feel less sharp. This does not overwhelm, it steadies. The body settles again, not deeper, just more completely. Weight distributes naturally. Balance remains without effort. He notices how earlier the night felt like something to pass through. Now it feels like something to dwell within. Not permanently, for now. The Psalms do not insist on permanence. They speak of ongoing presence, of remaining as long as needed. Belonging here does not demand loyalty. It does not test commitment. It simply allows rest. The night holds this allowance quietly. It does not announce safety. It does not guarantee outcome. Thoughts continue to arise occasionally. They pass through the sense of belonging without disruption. They do not displace it. The body recognizes this as safe. It responds with further ease. Breath remains slow and unforced. Belonging does not need to be claimed. It does not diminish if unspoken. It remains gentle and near. The Psalms continue their quiet weaving. Refuge, dwelling, presence. They blend without hierarchy. The night grows still again, though sound remains possible. Attention softens further. Edges blur. Belonging becomes less noticeable as it becomes more assumed. Like ground that no longer needs to be checked. Like air that does not need to be named. Nothing concludes here. Belonging continues in motion, not fixed, as listening carries on and awareness drifts inward, held gently without arrival or end. The movement slows without stopping. What has been present does not withdraw. It rests more lightly now, closer to the surface of breath. Night feels fully inhabited, not filled, known. The light remains faint and steady, no longer noticed as separate. It has become part of the quiet, part of the way attention rests. The shelter does not close. It loosens, enough to allow rest to deepen without being held in place. Belonging moves gently with each breath, in, out. Nothing new arrives, nothing needs to. The Psalms have settled into the background of listening, not spoken, lived. The body is free to drift, to sleep, or to hover near it. Both are held. Thought no longer gathers itself. It thins. It fades. Fear does not press. Goodness does not announce itself. Care continues without signal. The night remains open. The quiet remains kind. Breath continues, uncounted. Attention slips inward, softly, as if carried rather than moving on its own. There is no edge to reach, no ending to mark. Rest is allowed to arrive in its own way, or not arrive yet. The listening does not stop. It simply becomes less noticeable, like a tide that continues after it is no longer watched.